Got it.
So the
Boom,
conversation came up, somebody mentioned, or somebody was asking, can you light up your speakers, with like lighting, and who all had that? And of course, I had that in my setup. So I shared a photo, and one of the guys said, I would never sacrifice light output to place my center channel behind the screen. And I'm thinking, okay, so I don't know how to phrase this as a question, but
because of the perf.
Yeah, so
right?
You're thinking about
you got holes in your screen, right?
Correct. So I think everybody will agree there is some amount of light loss because it's going through the screen, some of it, versus a standard screen that isn't acoustic transparent. So pretty much most, or if not all, of that light is reflected. So it's probably going to be slightly brighter on a non-acoustic transparent screen. So the kind of question is, would you rather have a center channel directly behind a screen, a perforated or a weave or an acoustic transparent screen? Or would you rather, he was suggesting that he would rather have a center channel below or even above the screen than have it directly behind the screen on an acoustic transparent. So what do you guys think? And I'll definitely share my thoughts.
Aaron, what do you have?
Yeah, to me, I don't know. I think that's more dependent on the user. I would rather not see the speaker than, well, for one thing, I would rather not see the speaker. I would also like to have matching LCR. Mm-hmm. And I feel like since my room is dark enough, then I don't really have to worry about light, reflection off the screen. So I don't really worry about that. Right. I think that kind of is dependent upon the user, because some people may prefer the visual. They may be taken more aback by the visual than the sound. And I don't know. And the room, like I said. So it depends. One of those again. I would go with the acoustically transparent screen any day of the week. That's my bottom line.
Yeah. I'm glad you added line to that, because
that's my bottom line.
We're not concerned about your bottom.
Yeah, whatever, dude.
Of course, in my setup, I've got an acoustic transparent screen. I've got LCR.
That's not what you said backstage. Hey.
So I've had both setups. When I first built my theater room 15 years ago, I had a 103-inch screen, and at that time it wasn't acoustic transparent. So my main speakers were outside of the screen, and then the center channel had to be above the screen, but it was basically right above it. I had it angled down right at my listening position. But every time I watched a movie, kind of like you were talking about, I would be taken away from the movie because my brain would say, that sound isn't coming from your screen. That sound is coming from above the screen. And so to me, that really took away from that immersiveness and just the fact that I knew I was watching a movie instead of just being in a movie, if that kind of makes sense. And so by placing it directly behind the screen, man, it literally anchors that dialogue exactly where the sound is coming from. And to me, that's huge.
I buy that.
And the slide, I was just going to say, the slightest amount of light output that I'm losing from that, like you said, I've got a light controlled room, man. I can make that thing pitch black. I'm not worried about a tiny bit of light output that I'm losing. So it'd be different. He said it was a washed out screen. Like, his thought was you get a washed out screen with an AT screen. I'm like, dude, you don't have a good enough projector if you're getting a washed out screen from an AT. That's not the issue.
Well, so I'm using,
or your screen is way too porous.
Yeah, or something. Yeah.
So I'm using one from Elite Screens, not the most expensive screen out there. I'm using a BenQ projector. Mm-hmm. It's I think 2,500 lumens. So I mean, it's pretty bright.
Pretty bright, right? Yeah, definitely.
But I also have had a plain white screen, and I've also had ALR screen.
Right.
Use them in different scenarios, and I can see, like if you're sitting really close, you can see the weave. Like if you get super close to it, but from a typical
about the light output, did you see any difference in light output from it? Like, did you look at? Did you sit in your position and go, "Wow, that looks washed out because of it's an acoustic transparent screen"?
It's never always that. These kind of questions are very easy for me. It's just kind of like this: what will you notice more? Right? Will you notice that you're using an acoustic transparent screen and it's not as smooth and you're losing some light output? or the fact that the speaker is like a huge speaker sitting underneath?
Yeah.
Which one are you going to notice more?
Oh, the speaker. Yeah, I can't stand the speaker. I'll never go back to having a home theater with the center speaker visible.
I mean, I like what. Yeah, I liked what Mike was talking about because, like, when I was watching that Sony A90J and I was using the TV as the center channel, like, it's really cool because there's no speaker there. There's no speaker there, and the vocals, everything's coming right out of the TV or right out of the front. So if I was going to do a home theater, a dedicated room, I would definitely go AT. I don't think whatever loss in light output, just because there's holes in the thing, I don't think that's going to be a large enough issue. I think the overall experience is going to be way better, as opposed to, like you said, having big ass speakers just in the room.
You know what I ought to do one day? I ought to actually climb inside my screen, shut the door, turn on my projector, and just
and then look,
see how much comes through.
See what's in there, just out of curiosity. I've never done that.
I mean, maybe there'll be a video.
Make a video about it. Make a video about it. Like,
That'd be really hard.
Actually, what's it called? You guys are actually selling me on the idea of just hiding all the speakers.
Do it.
Because I remember one of the times, Aaron, you said, one of the biggest things that you did that made it really feel like a theater was hide all the speakers.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so I'm like, is that right?
Yeah, because when you walk in, it doesn't feel like you're walking into a glorified, and I'm not trying to say this to be mean because I've dealt with this for years, but it doesn't feel like you're walking into a glorified living room. It actually has that home theater type feel to it because the speakers aren't visible, Right. So, and again, I want to stress that I'm not knocking anybody who has a setup like I'm talking about, the one I don't prefer, because I've had plenty of those setups. I built a home years back, and the plan was to build a home theater. And then we got the first bill for the mortgage, and I was like, well, that's never going to happen. So, fast forward 7 years later, I finally have a legitimate home theater. So it took me a long time to get to that point, but that really did make all the difference. It wouldn't matter really so much what else I did to that room, but it made all the difference in the world, putting speakers behind the screen. When you sit down, you just can't see them. And ideally, what I would like to do, and I actually like this in Michael's video when he had the conversation with the guys from Wisdom Audio, it really kind of got my mind thinking again, is my side speakers, because mine's just a basic 5.1. I'm lowly compared to you guys, but my side speakers are big old theater speakers, and they stick out like that far from the wall. Yeah. I would like to just cut in some wall speakers. That way, when you're walking through, because the room isn't very, very large, you kind of have to slide out of the way when you walk past some of the seats. It would be nice to cut in a hole to put the speakers in the wall and maybe do like a line source like Michael interviewed the guy for. I think that would be neat. But hiding the speakers makes all the difference in the world, at least to me.
See, it's like these types of tips I think are the best because you have to have had the experience, right? So initially you want to just go and buy the best stuff and spend your money on this, whereas like you're saying, hey, if you can hide the speakers, it's going to make a big deal. Like invest in that because that'll add to your experience. And for me, a thing that I noticed is that people love the chairs, right? I always say when people come in, they see the big screen, like, oh, that's cool. I have an expensive sound system, and like, it sounds really good, and they're like, yeah, that's cool, but they love the chairs. They're like, these chairs are the most comfortable chairs. Like, they're all about the chairs. So that's where you need to invest: the chairs and hiding the speakers.
Yeah, I had bean bags for a long time.
So with my setup, one thing that was important is I didn't want to just completely hide them. You know what I'm saying? I wanted to be able to have easy access to them to either, let's say I've got a guest there, I'm like, hey, check out what I've got behind there. And a boom, they're like, holy cow, that's crazy. Or if I want to swap out speakers. So there are definitely some inexpensive ways to kind of have both to where you don't see them when you're watching a movie, but if you want to get access to them, just pop up the hood.
Yeah. I've seen that where you got the LED or something behind there. And I think that's cool. You can just kind of show it off.
Well, I have the LED, but I also have a latch and my entire screen's on gas shocks.
Yeah. So
it lifts up and
seeing yours makes me want to redo
I saw
mine.
you hit your head, man.
Yeah, I need to replace my shocks. They're like probably 12 years old now.
Oh wow!
So they're starting to sag a little bit. But, one video I did, I was backing out and I banged my head up against it. I'm like, well, I'll just leave that in the video. Whatever.
DV says our audio system is our main focal point in our living room, and right. I'm okay with that too. If you have a 2-channel setup, you got some awesome looking speakers. I have a setup like that too. and I like the way the speakers look good in the room.
Aesthetics, yeah.
You know, you get set up, you get your fancy cables, you get your cable risers. You know what I mean?
Cable
Do
risers.
it up. Do it up.
No, I
Do
mean
it up if you have
that's
to,
true
right?
though. A lot
Your
of people
equipment
use
rack, it's good.
a lot of people will use speakers as part of their decor, you know. So I totally get that. And if I didn't have, you know, a kid and dogs running around and I had a living room set up, I wouldn't care about hiding the speakers in the living room. That's, to me, that's different. But if you're shooting for a home theater, I think to really make it feel more like a home theater, if you're able to do like an acoustically transparent screen, that really, in my opinion, steps it up to the next level. It's kind of like, okay, now this is getting more legitimate, you know.
Unless you had those Macintosh, and then you'd put those behind the
so
screen to
the
make them shine through, right?
I've got a closet where I hide like all my amps and all my stuff, and it runs through and goes, you know, like most setups are. But I'm just like, what am I ever going to do if I'm ever able to afford Macintosh amplifiers? I'm going to have to rewire my whole home theater so I can put the amps right up front,
baby.
Yeah, man.
That's awesome.
Oh yeah, he says. Kanga says if you got Sonus fiber, you damn right. Yeah.
Yeah. That's no joke, man.
Dude, talking about how sometimes, I mean, in theaters you do see the speakers a lot of times, other than what's in front of the screen or behind the screen. Actually,
right.
You know, just depends on the theater. Sometimes they, you know, mask them all and they put them all inside behind fabric and in the walls. But a lot of them do have at least the side surrounds and rear surrounds, kind of, but they're just really high, so they're definitely not noticeable. And once the lights go out, of course, you don't see them at all.
Yeah. Well, and for me, it's not so much about hiding the side speakers just because of the noticeable aspect, but you know, just trying to maneuver around them. You know, they, like I said, they stick out pretty far from the wall. They're the ones that actually came from a theater in town, so they are real JBL Pro speakers. So they're large. They're made to actually fill up a real theater. So it would be cool if I could, you know, hide those some way.
If I could afford
those are two-way speakers. Those are two-way speakers. Yeah.
The ones that I have.
Yeah.
Oh, hold on. The mains or the sides?
The ones that you were just talking about right now.
The sides are, I think they're three-way. It's like an 8-inch mid-woofer, a 4-inch mid-range, and maybe a 1-inch dome tweeter and a waveguide.
You got some big old sides in.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. But it came as kind of a package deal because I know I've told you guys about this before, but just to recap, there was a Carmike theater in town that closed down. A church bought them. The sound guy for the church took all the speakers out, put them in storage, not storage shed, but like a storage locker. And then he posted on Craigslist, hey, I've got all the stuff. So I went up there and bought a bunch of stuff, and it was like $800 for tons of stuff for my whole theater room plus amps.
$800.
Nice.
$800 for 615s, 3 compression drivers and the big horns. I mean, just tons of stuff. I'm not going to get into it all. So I wound up redoing a lot of the woofers. I rebuilt the cabinets for them and all sorts of stuff. But it basically came as such a package deal that I just went ahead and used the side speakers, and I've got 2 more sitting upstairs just in case something ever happens.